you get these assholes. And you see, well, Trump's moving the country, and the young non-white males are moving against the party, and the this and the that, and the technical stuff, and the regression analysis. You got to make this thing so fucking big, you knock them out of their jackass chairs.
James, Donald Trump has the top cop of the world has, at least for now, decided to take control of Washington, D.C.'s law enforcement. This is neither about tackling crime or worried about D.C. It's two purposes. One is a distraction from the Epstein scandal, at least in the media for now. That seems to be working. The other is to draw Democrats into a fight over crime, along with immigration, instead of battling over Medicaid cuts or food prices. In Washington, the crime rate is down sharply from a few years ago. Trump lied about that. But if that becomes the centerpiece of any Democratic criticism, they lose, Trump wins. Crime still is too high, and anyone who gets carjacked or mugged thinks it's off the charts. You can go after Trump on several grounds. One, he doesn't care about crime. Remember January the 6th? He sat idly by as the Capitol was assaulted and people died. He didn't call out the National Guard then. He just does it for political purposes. The other is that I think we do need more police in some of our big cities, including Washington. But the National Guard, the Park Police, and others, they are not trained for this. They are trained sometimes to help with crowd control. We need more police. What he ought to do, and better paid police, what he ought to do is take that huge increase from the awful big bill for ICE of $75 billion, take 10% of that and give it to cities to be used to add additional police forces if necessary. As our guest, remember our guest, David Harris from the University of Pittsburgh Law School, who notes that if you police flood the zone with good cops in high crime areas, it reduces crime, it protects people. It's the effective way to go about this. Trump doesn't give a damn about this. This is just all for a show.
Okay, so what she said is certainly what we hear. And we hear that it's crime and there's the perception that Democrats are solving crime, and we shouldn't talk about that. Okay, I understand that. Just so we know what the facts are. The crime rate in 2024, the last year of the Biden administration, okay, I could say the first year, you heard something. By year 4, you're willing to call it crime, was the lowest it had been since 1960. Let me repeat that, okay? In the year 2024, the crime rate in the United States was the lowest it's been since 1960. So, of course, people don't know that. The perception is it's high. And the question then becomes, well, do we just not talk about it? So I think that in the most precipitous drop in crime came in the 1990s. Understand, going into the 90s, it was thought we had a predator class. This was universally accepted from academia on down. Of course, we had no such thing. And we end up in 2024 with the lowest crime rate since 1960. And understand, particularly things like shootings, these are very accurate statistics. All right, I'm sorry. So the question is do we talk about other things? Well, I'm not sure that 65 years of talking about other things has served the country very well. And I know, and people felt we friends of ours on our Sunday Zoom, in the word that gets you every time is the perception. Well, how did the perception get there? Because it certainly didn't get there because people were experiencing more crime. I know one crime is too many. but it's kind of across the board. The whole thing went like crazy down. I mean, like way outside of any statistical noise or margin of error or anything like that. And the crime rate in Washington, D.C. was down 26%. But if somebody says, but that's not what people think, well, maybe they think that because they've been told it's high, and people say, well, we shouldn't point out because we just let it go. I don't know. But I do know that this is what we faced with, and I'm just not. Certainly that we can talk about rural hospitals, which a big issue with people. Maybe crime is not a big issue it used to be, for the simple reason there's less crime. Okay, that's why it's not as issue as it used to be. But if we're going to go in the perception there's more crime, I don't know, Al. I'm thinking out loud. I mean, this is a conversation that's not going to get solved on one podcast. It's not going to get solved on one Zoom call. But I do know, and I hear this repeatedly, the perception is crime is high and it's the Democrats' fault in the cities. And that's just not true.
Well, it's not true. And I certainly am not saying don't talk about crime. Talk about crime. Talk about real crime prevention. Talk about more cops. Talk about the fact that Washington has 1,000 less police officers than it did a year ago. Talk about the fact that the Republicans in Congress are holding up something like $1 billion of funding that goes to law enforcement, among other things. And talk about the fact the National Guard and the Park Police, as Trump would have you believe, are not trained to deal with inner city policing. They're trained to deal with crowd control in some cases. And I think talk about the fact that police efforts ought to be focused on those areas of high crime. And I think that A is substantively correct, and I think it's politically right. To argue crime is down, it is. But I mean, I'm sorry. It's not for that person who was mugged. It's not for that person whose car was taken. It's not for. I mean, it is. I forget the statistics, but something like 100 out of every 10,000. But it's not that you give in to his line on this. You don't. You attack his line, but you don't talk about it as if, well, let's just let it happen, whatever's going on.
And just maybe I'm open. I understand. Okay, but maybe if you started, what are we doing that is working, and how do we build on that? And I know if one person's mugged, the statistic doesn't matter. If a guy loses his job, the rate of employment doesn't matter. If somebody puts their money in some shitty startup and they lose money, well, the S&P doesn't matter to them. But I'm just asking, should we, what in the fuck are you talking about? Right? And all we have to do, I'm sorry, is, we could go back to what's working. Policing is actually working well in the country today. All right, this is something I do know something about, and it's working because, well, there's something called predictive policing, and it's pretty damn successful. And what is working, there are a lot of factors that go into crime reduction, but effective policing is certainly one of them. And why don't we go back and do the 100,000 cops, as opposed to tax breaks for people making over $500,000 a year?
Amen. Amen. Amen.
This is what's working. Let's do more of what's working, but start from the premise well, we're having some success here. After 4 years, Joe Biden, with the lowest in 65 fucking years. All right. I'm saying the approach is critical. I'm not sure that I think I believe what I'm arguing, but it's something that has to be flushed out, because it's always, I go back in the frustration that I feel, when you take a poll, who's better in the economy, Republicans and Democrats. Republicans kind of come out better. Well, that's the perception. So we really shouldn't say, and I'm not directing this at you, that actually, by every macroeconomic performance that we can think of, we had Larry Summers on the show and we asked him, he said, well, it's kind of true, tell you the truth. Why is it that Democrats beat Republicans on every positive economic indicator that exists? The only one that is kind of even is inflation, but that's understandable. But why people don't know that? Is it the fault of Fox that doesn't tell them that? I'm sure it has something to do with it. Is it the fault of Democratic messaging and Democratic people say, wait a minute, stop, get where we are? And they say, well, you shouldn't say it. And I understand that too, because if the economy is not good for one person and you say it's good, they think you're clueless. But somehow or another, the American public is getting really shitty information. And I don't know how, I don't know if it's whose fault it is, but some of it is, we better not talk about it.
Well, I think we ought to talk about it, but I think we ought to talk about it in a way that's both substantively and politically effective. It is very easy to criticize what Trump is doing. I'm sorry, the park police are not going to be your great protectors if you're down on Georgia Avenue in Washington. They don't know how to do police work in the city. They haven't been trained that way. Same in the National Guard. I think you can say the police force in Washington is down, I think, by about 1,000. And I think they need more police. They need more police in designated areas and to keep doing the kind of police work they're doing. But, James, they also need more money. Congress, the Republicans are withholding $1 billion. You know, part of the problem is school truancy and lack of summer opportunities. Those kids who took on the former Doge guy and assaulted him were 15 years old. And I think there can be, you know, more money for that too. But basically, I think you're right. Crime, basically, we're doing a good job in most places on crime, and let's just build on that.
Again, it's a matter of, this is, just think of, we're down 26%. Just think of what we would be if we were, manpower's 1,000 short. So you say, well, you know, we're never going to get to 1,000. Police recruiting, for a lot of reasons, is hard. You know what one of the big reasons is? Drug testing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm being frank with you.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
And it's also poaching. So the Metropolitan Police, I forgot this. It's like an astronomical number of police forces in the Washington, D.C. area that can actually make an arrest. It's like 25 or maybe more than that. So they're recruiting against the Park Police, the Fairport Police, the Capitol Police, the George Washington Parkway Police, the Pentagon Police, the you name it. I mean, it's hard for the D.C., the Metropolitan Police Force, to hire people because there's a lot of pressure to get police jobs. And, you know, maybe we could do something, but just from the vantage point of, it's working really well. How do we keep this ball rolling in the right direction? How do we build on the momentum we have? And that's all I'm saying directionally. That's what we got to go to. And of course they can't argue. I mean, they're going to argue with it. They're not going to tell their people. But, you know, you just say, look, you can fact check me. This is just what it is. And again, some of these crime statistics should be really accurate. Like shootings is particularly accurate because the hospitals have to report when somebody gets nicked, you don't know it. But there's something that's going on. And it's something that's happening that's pretty good. And the better we figure it out, and I think we both kind of feel like at some level, more effective policing really works.
I do. And I think, but again, the term more is there. I think in a place like Washington, you need more police doing the good kind of police work that they're capable of doing. That's in contrast to Trump. Trump is talking about National Guards and park police and everything. That does not work. And I think it's very easy to criticize Trump and also have a plan to make what has been an improved situation better.
All right. So read the Declaration of Independence, and read the beef that they had about British having troops on our streets. I think there's even a provision in the Constitution. I got to check, but we got a lot of lawyers here that talks about the public quartering troops. That somebody pointed out that during the World War II, the Japanese had captured a couple of islands in the Aleutians, and the troops came in, and actually somebody might have had a case that they would confiscate people's houses. I mean, about 200 people lived there, but it doesn't matter. It's the United States. But the whole idea of domestic troops is really inbred in the tradition of the United States as manifested in its Declaration of Independence. So this is grotesquely anti-patriotic. We're turning our backs on the principles that this country was founded on. We're turning our backs on what's in the Declaration of Independence. And I unfortunately, I can't pull it up fast enough, but I think even there's something in the Constitution about it.
Well, we can check that, and I would just add that those, terrific young men and women graduating from West Point and Annapolis are not trained to hunt down bicycle stealers. We need good cops, and I think we have a lot of good cops. We can have in some areas. We probably need more. I go back to, as I say, our friend David Harris, who I think enumerated exactly what works so well. So we'll come back to this. The other Trump news. I'm starting to laugh. He didn't like the numbers that came out from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A bunch of professionals over there who put together reliable numbers. They've been relied on for decades, if not longer. But Trump had a very simple solution. He fired the director of the BLS, highly respected woman apparently, and he replaced her with a Trump lackey, E.J. Antoni. Now, the data reported by the BLS, James, it matters. The Federal Reserve bases much of its decision-making on what kind of data they're seeing, reliable data they're seeing from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Social Security benefits are determined by the BLS's Consumer Price Index changes. And I'm not sure how much this new guy can fool with the data, but he has a clear mandate from Trump. Get me good numbers. It's gonna be really interesting to watch, and I'm gonna be skeptical he starts producing good numbers.
Well, as our dear friend Roger Altman points out, there's a wealth of private data out there. And then, of course, the markets pay attention to the public data. They pay attention to BLS. You can see when it number comes out 8:30 on the first Friday after the first Thursday of the month, you almost know which way the market's going to go. All right, they trust it over decades and decades. But if they put untrustworthy shit out, these big hedge funds and stuff, they got their own research and they'll put it out.
These big hedge funds aren't going to determine Social Security benefits, James.
No,
that's a pretty big deal.
I agree, but it's gonna. Look, it's horrible. I'm not at all suggesting to you that it's not horrible, and they're gonna tinker with the inflation number. They're gonna try to, but the more that private data that comes out that contradicts it, the less effective it is. I guess that's what I'm saying. But no, it's beyond horrible. You can't imagine how bad it is.
Well, what it is, James, is if it's like, you go to a doctor and that doctor says, you're kind of in trouble. You have Parkinson's, maybe even cancer. And you said, well, let's get rid of that doctor. God damn it. I don't like that result. Let's go find a doctor who's going to give me good news. If you do that, you're stupid. And what Trump is doing is stupid. And I fear it's going to have some harm.
What he's doing is trying to cling to every shred of power he can possibly cling to.
Right.
And he doesn't care if the data is wrong or whatever. But he doesn't even think like that. And, we'll talk about it some more.
I'll tell you one thing, just a final note on the Washington, D.C. thing. One thing that I think underscores that the person who should be championing the district in Congress is Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is 88 years old. She's out of it. She doesn't belong there. It's just like Dianne Feinstein was, and it's just like I think Chuck Grassley is being run by staff. I would not vote for an age limit, but God damn it, people who are beyond the pale ought to get the hell out.
God damn, mentally, has been there since I can remember. Jesus,
Yeah.
look, I agree with you. I'm not for an age limit, but man, I think these younger people have been, even though we're two old guys, I think, I mean, somebody, give Nancy Pelosi some credit. I mean, she took it right to where she had to, and then she had the good sense and the grace and the dignity to leave.
Yeah. However old.
I got to say that Virginia and New Jersey, these these are not elections. Okay, you're not really. Of course, you're voting for a governor. Of course, you got to live with what you have. And I would argue very persuasively. I think that the two candidates that we're Democratic Party's offered in both states are uniquely qualified, uniquely fit the time, fit the job, fit the moment. But this is not just an election like you go. It's a SOS signal to the country. It's like, okay, if we win Virginia by 5.5 points, I'm going to be disappointed. And you should never say that in politics. A win is a win. Come on, man. It doesn't matter. All you do is you have the governor. You can implement, and that's great. And I think she'll be a great governor. But we got to romp and stomp and run up the score. People that listen to this podcast, you send money to the state party or volunteer or call people, and you're going to win. That's not what we're not talking about winning the Virginia governorship. We're talking about sending a SOS sign. When John Hancock signed the Declaration of Independence, his famous hand, he wanted the king to be able to read it without his glasses. All right. You're John Hancock.
You don't think he had me in mind?
I'm telling you, whatever you do, these elections are critical, and they're not just an election to elect a governor. It's a SOS to the entire country. Oh my God, we're sinking. Somebody do something. And you know what? I think we're going to get it done. I'm preaching the Virginia and New Jersey gospel between now and November of this year, because it's got to be so big that you get these assholes. And you see, Trump's moving the country, and the young non-white males are moving against the party, and the this and the that, and the technical stuff, and the regression analysis. You got to make this thing so fucking big, you knock them out of their jackass chairs.
I'll take two
And I think you're gonna do it.
I'll take 2 double-digit wins.
It's
you will
not,
too. You want more, but you'll take that.
I'd take it, but I want more.
Yeah.
When it comes,
James, when it comes to winning important races, you've always been greedy.
This is not just an important race. It's not. Look, we had Chris Christie for 8 years in New Jersey. I don't know. I think would have been better off with a Democratic governor. We had McDowell 4 years in Virginia. We just had Youngkin for 4 years. I mean, I certainly think we cut back on things that we shouldn't, and we didn't do like a lot of stuff that I wish. But Virginia's still there, New Jersey's still there. If we don't do this, the United States might not still be there. All right, that's the difference. With every election, we drive up the stakes. We talk about its importance. I think they are important. This is like the first chance that the American people have to send out a SOS message. And it has to be clear, it has to be crisp, it has to be loud, and it has to be decisive. And of course, suppose we come back, we win Virginia by 4.5, we win New Jersey about 1.5. Somebody's going to say, well, Carville, you'll run your goddamn mouth back in August, and look how well the Republicans did. They'll have a point.
Yeah.
They'll have a point. And you can say something like, well, we won the election. That's what counts. We now have continue Democratic rule in New Jersey, and we now have a Democratic government in Virginia. Lives will be better, but it ain't going to save the country. That 4.5 in Virginia and 1.5 in New Jersey, it's not going to save the country. In fact, probably put it more in reverse.
83 days to go. Big November 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really big.